When most people think of hip-hop history, there's usually two places that come to mind. New York City with the Bronx 70s scene, and LA with the gangster rap G-Funk era. Not many people think of Atlanta or the South in general. Despite this, ATL today has become an industry powerhouse, dominating not just the charts, but literally the entire sound of hip-hop. The city went from being completely ignored to the modern hub of not just rap, but the entire entertainment industry. It rivals massive cities like New York and LA with ease. But how could this happen in a place that nobody was checking for or believed in? To find that out, today we're doing a deep dive on the full history of Atlanta hip-hop leading up until today. How did this unassuming city first break into the spotlight? How did it create the most influential sound in rap history? And how did that sound quickly take over the globe? My name's Pancho, the host of Rap Lore, and we're gonna dive into it right now.
What happens when the city of Atlanta takes on a slumlord?
To understand how Atlanta became the center of hip-hop, you have to first understand what Atlanta really was. ATL was different than most major cities. This wasn't New York or LA. This was a huge, sprawled out, and pretty undeveloped landscape. It's so underdeveloped that it got the nickname the city in the forest, with neighborhoods looking like they were carved literally right out of a forest. On top of that, Atlanta was the center of the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, led by MLK. This history drastically shaped the future and pride of the city. By the late 80s, it was considered the capital of Black America, Black wealth, Black politics, and having the highest visibility of Black-owned businesses in the country. The city also has the most HBCUs in any metro area in the country. Spelman, Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown, ITC, all major HBCUs that helped shape the city's personality. This was a big contrast to New York and LA, where most minority residents were underdogs. Lots of them grew up never seeing Black success, role models, or Black people in any positions of power. Atlanta having this gave residents a sense of pride and confidence, which would translate into the music in a major way. But despite the visible Black success, there was a whole other side of Atlanta that was too big to ignore. Large parts of the city were in complete disarray. They were stacked top to bottom with abandoned homes, extreme poverty, open drug use, and violence. Some parts of the city, like Zone 6 East and Southwest Atlanta, were so bad that it looked like the city just gave up on them entirely. And the people who owned the properties didn't make things any better. Lots of buildings were owned by wealthy out-of-state investors. When property values dropped due to what was happening in the neighborhood, they neglected the buildings, refusing to fix basic issues like mold and exposed wiring. They got the nickname slumlords for literally turning neighborhoods into slums. Some slumlords refused to make improvements but still tried to extract rent from tenants, and others just gave up on the property altogether. This led to entire blocks being filled with abandoned homes, which later got the nickname bandos. This setup created a unique contrast within the city. You had extreme pride from the history mixed with extreme hunger from the current reality. People growing up here were prideful and confident, while at the same time willing to run through walls to get what they needed.
Make Atlanta a fun place. Just like they were having fun up in New York.
Atlanta had a much later start in the rap game compared to most cities like New York and LA. While both of those places had things in motion in the 70s, Atlanta didn't really step into the game until the mid-80s. On top of the late start, the music was far from what we imagined rap to be during this time. Most of the artists and songs coming out around this time were heavily influenced from the bass and electro music bubbling in Miami. The widely accepted first rapper to ever come out the city was Mojo, a West End native. He spearheaded the local scene in the early 80s with his song Batman, Let Mojo Handle It.
Now Batman, you don't have the groove, but I'm here to make the party people move. I don't care who you've been fighting with, I can tell you one thing, let Mojo handle it.
This was put out under a local label called Velvetone Records and was seen as the first Atlanta rap song to receive major radio airplay. Even though he was a pioneer, he would never hit mainstream success, mostly due to factors outside of himself. The biggest factor was that Atlanta was just not seen as a rap hub, and audiences outside the city were not welcoming of him at all. Quote, the people from New York did not like it at all. They were not kind to me. They felt like I was biting on New York. People outside the city didn't like the southern sound, slang, twang, twang, or anything else about it. It's very likely that if Mojo came out a few years later, he would have been a huge success. Despite hitting the ceiling for himself personally, Mojo paved the way for many artists after him to push boundaries and force Atlanta's name into the conversation. The person who did that best in the 80s was MC Shy D. Ironically, Shy D was born in the Bronx and was the cousin of the disgraced hip-hop pioneer Africa Bambaataa. He moved to Decatur, Georgia when he was 11, and in the mid-80s he took Mojo's blueprint and ran with it. He started making noise in the city with solid projects and singles, most notably Rap Will Never Die.
Don't be coming up to me and say that rap will die, because rap is something that you can't deny. The beat is so funky, it makes you move your feet, and the rapper comes on and get you out your seat.
These records got the attention of Luther Campbell, who signed him to his legendary Florida-based label, Luke Skywalker Records. Shy's fast-paced delivery and club energy mixed with Miami-based production was a winning recipe. Together, they put out smash records like Gotta Be Tough, It's Just My Caddy, and Shake It. He also introduced the world to DJ Toomp, a Southwest Atlanta musician who toured and DJ'd constantly with Shy. Toomp would be massively successful as the years goes on. We'll get more into that later. This was Atlanta's first breakout star. His album Got to Be Tough broke the Billboard Top 200 at slot 197, but it's something. Also, just like Mojo, his success began shifting the perception of Atlanta rap as a whole. Other notable artists in this era who helped put Atlanta on the map included Kilo Ali, Raheem the Dream, Hitman Sammy Sam, and the group Silk Times Leather, along with producers Mr. Collie Park and DJ Toomp, who I mentioned above.
Freaknik was the greatest black gathering in America.
While all these people were making moves, Atlanta's night scene was exploding like crazy. The Atlanta rap, Miami-based sound took over the clubs, skate rinks, and community centers. On top of that, a huge wave of street parties started popping up. People would deck out their cars with massive trunk speaker systems, pull up to parking lots, and throw crazy wild parties. Then all this was amplified by the birth of Freaknik. Freaknik was a huge, unofficial spring break festival that took place in Atlanta during the rise of its rap scene. It started around '83 as a small picnic organized by students from the HBCUs Spelman and Morehouse. Over time, it grew into a massive event drawing hundreds of thousands of people from across the US, mostly young black college students. The event was known for street parties, cruising, loud music, and crazy, crazy dancing. Hulu made a documentary about Freaknik in 2024, and first-hand accounts of the event were absolutely crazy. Quote, "It was incredible music. It was a time where music was good, and all the stuff coming out of the South was really good. People had incredible sound systems. You would have people driving at 60 miles an hour on the highway, and someone would hit the brakes and someone else would follow them, and boom, 48 seconds later, every car would stop, every door would open, people would get out of their cars, and everyone would start dancing and taking off their clothes. Chicks with no clothes on, women being extremely explicit, you know, got the handstands and the chicks with the legs, and women taking their tops off in the street. It's basically gridlock, black gridlock, and ignorance mixed in one. Everybody wanted to get into the parties, but if you couldn't get into a party, you started your own party. Walking down the streets in a thong, you're taking it a bit too far. You're walking around in public, having sex against a tree, okay, uninhibited. People were being exhibitionists. I knew for me, I couldn't be out there because I didn't have anonymity. Had I had anonymity, it probably would have been a whole different story. That is a wild, wild party. And since so many people traveled from outside the city to take part in it, it really put Atlanta on the map as a creative and cultural hub. It was abrasive, unapologetically Southern, and demanded that the world pay attention to it. It also created tons of problems in the city, like crazy gridlock traffic and disorderly conduct, which made Atlanta crack down on it by the mid-90s. But while it was a thing, it massively boosted Atlanta's profile and became a huge stage for native artists to be heard. This ATL culture that surrounded the music, plus all the people I mentioned above, laid the framework for Atlanta to really take off. And this movement was led by an unlikely group of teenagers in a sweaty, packed basement.
They went to dungeon. And this, you know what I'm saying, where we just make, you know what I'm saying, make our music, we sit down here and vibe.
By the early 90s, Atlanta had a strong, homegrown hip-hop movement. It wasn't recognized nationwide yet, but it was solid, true to the city, and 100% theirs. However, this was about to change in a big way. Enter Organized Noize into the picture. Organized Noize is a legendary production group based in South Atlanta. The founding fathers were Ray Murray, Patrick Sleepy Brown, and the late Rico Wade, who turned his mom's house into the hub for the group. Sleepy grew up in a musical household, with his dad being a singer and multi-instrumentalist for the 70s funk group Brick. This gave him the funky, soulful background that would become a huge part of the group's sound. On the other hand, Ray and Rico grew up entrenched in the local street culture, giving them knowledge and insight into what the city was sounding like and feeling on a daily basis. The three of them set up shop in Rico's mom's basement, which was nicknamed the Dungeon because it was dark, smelly, crowded, and chaotic. In the Dungeon, the group spent every waking hour making beats, songs, and developing local artists. And the group had ears of gold. They scouted and developed the perfect acts, including TLC and Goody Mob in the 90s. However, one act really moved the chains for not just the group, but the whole city, and that was OutKast.
Closed-minded folks, you know what I'm saying? South got something to say.
When OutKast hit the scene, Atlanta went from an afterthought to something that was way too big to ignore. OutKast was formed by two East Point-based teenagers, Andre Lauren Benjamin, also known as Andre 3000, and Antoine Andre Patterson, Big Boy. The two met at the Tri-Cities High School as teenagers and connected through their love of music, despite the fact that their personalities couldn't be any more different. Andre was a quiet, quirky, nerdy kid, while Big Boy was a popular, jock-type football player. Despite their differences, the two partnered up and after a few name changes landed on OutKast to embrace how different and overlooked they felt as artists. The duo got connected with Organized Noize through a mutual friend, and the production group saw potential in them right away. They were polished and energetic, going bar for bar with each other and having a clear sense of hunger to succeed. Because Organized Noize believed in them, they took a personal interest to make sure that the teens would succeed. They pushed OutKast hard, almost working them to death, to be honest. They made sure they were ready for every situation as performers. Big Boy would come out years later, revealing the insane training Organized Noize put them through. Quote, "The way they trained us, we had to run around the block hundreds of times reciting our rhymes. So at a Big Boy show, you're not going to hear Big Boy rapping over recorded lyrics. I do motherfucking miles and miles on the bike, rapping to keep that breath control. Whatever the crowd gives us, we give it back. 90 minutes of cardio, dancing, gyrating, giving them that yang. I fucking tore my patellar tendon on stage, slinging yang." But the brutal training paid off when Rico Wade presented OutKast to LaFace Records, the hometown record label run by Babyface and L.A. Reid. Reid initially hesitated, saying that he didn't believe the young teens were really stars, and this was shown in the 2016 documentary about Organized Noize. Quote, "L.A. Reid didn't want to sign OutKast at first. He was like, yeah, I like them, but I don't think that they're stars. I don't know, but I'll give them a chance. I'll give them a song. Let's put them on a Christmas album compilation." That one decision turned out to be life-changing for both Reid and OutKast when the group came out with their future ATL anthem, Players Ball.
It's beginning to look a lot like wood. Follow my every step. Take notes on how I crept.
About to go in depth. This track was peak Atlanta. The song, along with the music video, showcased Atlanta culture, climate, and lifestyle, something that the majority of the world outside the city had never seen before. And people were hooked right away. OutKast, along with Organized Noize, would follow this single up with some of the most iconic albums to ever drop in hip-hop history. The list includes Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music, ATLians, Aquemini, Stankonia, and later on Speakerboxxx The Love Below, one of the best-selling rap albums of all time. Their success also led to the iconic award show speech back in '95 when the group won Best New Rap Group and was booed by the entire crowd. The booing was mainly because this was the height of the East Coast-West Coast war, and people weren't interested in hearing anything else besides that. Andre took it in stride though, hopping on stage and announcing to the world the South got something to say. And he was 1000% right. This was just the beginning. OutKast brought Atlanta to life. By the 2000s, no one could deny the movement coming from the city. But at the same time OutKast's soulful sound was taking over, something completely fresh was brewing that would once again force people to pay attention to the city and the forest. Enter Crunk music. Crunk was basically high energy, bass heavy party music that's sole purpose was to set clubs off. That's the simplest way I could describe it. Or if you want a more colorful description, you can hear Kane from the Yin Yang Twins break it down.
Yeah, and people rocking.
Crunk took influence from punk and skater culture, which one of its biggest stars, Lil Jon, spoke about on the New York Times podcast.
I was going to punk clubs in the 80s. I was a skater in the 80s before it was cool. Skateboarding honestly opened my mind to other cultures, other music. It made me be able to be in a room with people of different ethnicities and be able to have a conversation and relate. Because Atlanta is kind of segregated. Black people stay over here, the Mexicans over here, the white people over here. All kind of kids is skateboarding. And we riding skateboarding all day, all over the city. We're spending time together. And then going to the skate contest, they're playing Faction, they're playing Bad Brains, they're playing Dead Kennedys. They playing all these bands, and I'm like, the bands are in the skate videos.
Right.
Because we were buying the skate videos, VHS. Sure. When you make music, your spirit is recorded into the songs. So my energy from being in those punk clubs, that spirit, that energy is going into the music. I used to pattern myself on stage like HR, the way he is on stage or was on stage, his energy and his unpredictability, and like he let the music take over him.
Now, Crunk didn't actually start in Atlanta. It started 400 miles west in Memphis, Tennessee. It's considered Memphis's first big global movement in hip hop, led by the iconic rap group 3 6 Mafia. However, it didn't take long for the Crunk wave to travel east, and Atlanta embraced it with open arms. The city took the blueprint that Memphis laid down and took it to the moon. A bunch of artists jumped in line to lead Atlanta's Crunk wave. Notable names include Crime Mob, Bone Crusher, Lil Scrappy, the Ying Yang Twins, and most famously the man I mentioned before, Lil Jon and the East Side Boys. These people put out some of the most infectious club records of the millennia, especially Lil Jon, who dominated charts with singles like Get Low, Yeah, and Snap Your Fingers, which was kind of more snap music than Crunk, and I'll get more into that in a bit. Regardless, Crunk set the world on fire, and people who were in the city when it was popping were absolutely addicted to it. Lil Jon spoke about why Crunk became so big during an interview with The Breakfast Club. It also happened to come out during the ringtone era when everyone was turning their favorite catchy songs into ringtones, which boosted the genre's reach way, way further. These songs were also famously played in the Magic City strip club in downtown, which became a testing ground to see which songs were hits. DJs would spin records and see how dancers and fans reacted, and if a song really turned the club up, they knew it would be a hit nationwide. That's how people in the city decided which artists and which records to push throughout the years. Kind of a dope system, and very different from the TikTok campaigns we see to push songs today. Crunk represented the city's soul. It was chaotic, wild, and made sure everyone in the room had a great time listening to it. It also gave way for another short-lived but iconic movement in the Atlanta rap scene, snap music. This was an interesting one. It didn't last long at all, really just a few years from 2005 to 2009, but for the time it was around, it was big. Snap is basically Crunk music's Lil Bro. It's Crunk influenced, but much more chill. The aggressive drums were swapped with sparse kicks and snaps, while the crazy bass was changed for a more sub 808 bass feel. This was way more about the feel and groove over the pure chaos of Crunk. Artists that led the snap era included Dem Franchise Boys, D4L, Young Jock, Fabo, DJ Unk, and later on Soulja Boy. The biggest songs from this era included Laffy Taffy by D4L, Lean With It, Rock With It by Dem Franchise Boys, It's Going Down by Young Jock, Walk It Out by UNK, and most famously, Crank That by Soulja Boy. By 2009, Snap, along with Crunk, started to die out because of a few colliding events that pushed it out of the spotlight. One, the ringtone craze started to die out, which was a big reason the music went so global. Along with that, YouTube and blogs started taking over, which shifted where fans went to go listen to music. Less people were looking for new music in clubs, and more people sought it out online. On top of that, one other genre we haven't spoken about yet started picking up more and more steam and was on the verge of not just taking over the industry, but changing the landscape of music as we knew it. While Crunk and Snap were about partying and celebrating, this genre represented Atlanta's other reality: struggle, despair, and hopelessness. Enter the chat, trap music. Trap changed everything for Atlanta. Everything the city had done up to this point set the stage for trap to literally run the world. Trap music's history runs extremely deep in the city. The term trap itself has two roots. One was the trap houses, which were homes, usually bandos, where drugs were sold, and the second was the trap itself, which is the life of poverty that often trapped a lot of Atlanta's residents. Trap music became the soundtrack to these scenarios, with rappers speaking about struggle, crime, poverty, and hustling. The sound for trap had a ton of influences from outside the city. One was Houston's down-tempo, chopped and screwed vibe led by DJ Screw, and the other was Memphis's dark, gritty rap sound pioneered by 3 6 Mafia, DJ Paul, and Tommy Wright III. People debate when Atlanta trap really launched, and a lot of it depends on what you define as trap music. For the sake of this video, we'll call it rap mixed with the production we know as trap. Heavy 808s, booming kicks, and rolling hi-hats. The earliest trap records came out in the early 2000s, and people credit T.I. for spearheading the movement with his 2003 album, Trap Music. This was the first album branded as trap, and T.I., along with his label Grand Hustle Records, set things in motion for the genre to really take off. Right after T.I. came Young Jeezy with his 2 projects, Trap or Die and Let's Get It, Thug Motivation 101. Not long after, Gucci Mane broke onto the scene with his huge album Trap House, led by the collab single with Jeezy, Icy. The 3 of them together, T.I., Jeezy, and Gucci Mane, became known as the Trap Trinity, the trio that brought trap to the mainstream and popularized it throughout the city. T.I. was the polished street narrator, Jeezy was the real raw voice of the struggle, and Gucci was the hilarious but authentic voice of street violence and pain. Gucci later on would also become one of the most successful talent spotters in the city. He'd launch his artist-led label 1017 Records and go on to sign some of the most iconic artists ever in rap history. Also, it wasn't just the rappers that made trap huge. The producers were just as big, and you could argue that the production is really what made the genre stand the test of time. The things I mentioned before, booming 808s mixed with dark melodies and aggressive drums, made the genre ear-catching to not just the city, but the whole nation. There was a few iconic names that really pioneered this production. The big ones were Shawty Red, DJ Toomp, and Drummer Boy, who all came through with dark, cinematic orchestral sounds, along with Zaytoven, who originally was from the Bay but moved to Atlanta and brought a church-based gospel sound to the city. These artists and producers were trap's forefathers and set the stage for the next generation to make Atlanta trap global.
I go hard in them.
Despite the fact that trap was the 5th or 6th iteration of Atlanta hip-hop, no other subgenre would have the global influence that trap had, and there was a few big reasons for this. First, trap music's rise lined up perfectly with the hip-hop mixtape era. The mixtape era was a legendary time in rap starting in the early 2000s that let rappers build their buzzes through posting mixtapes online. This era was legendary for a few reasons. One, it completely bypassed the need for traditional album cycles and prevented gatekeepers from blocking their progress. 2, it let artists rap on iconic instrumentals and release them without copyright issues or lawsuits because the music wasn't monetized. It was a free mixtape, not a label-backed album. Lastly, mixtapes were made to be raw and less polished than commercial music, which fit trap's personality perfectly. This recipe let rappers drop projects all the time, sometimes putting out multiple projects in a year. That helped them shoot to fame and find success without the need for any labels at all. The big platforms in the mixtape game were live mixtapes, Spinrilla, and the most legendary one, Dat Piff. Pretty much every major Atlanta rapper was playing the mixtape game. The Trap Trinity kicked it off, and lots more artists jumped on the wave, including OJ the Juice Man, Young Dro, Young LA, Shawty Low, and Waka Flocka Flame. And all of the hottest, best mixtapes were hosted by one man, DJ Drama. DJ Drama is a Philly-based DJ who became the face of the mixtape era with his Gangsta Grills movement. Anyone who had potential to be a star tapped in with this man and had his iconic tag play in the beginning of their songs. DJ Holiday was another DJ who built a respectable name during this time. While Drama was seen as the mixtape king, Holiday with his holiday season movement was Atlanta's DJ for the streets. The mixtape era would die off in the mid-2010s, mainly because streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music popped up. Consumers preferred the subscription model to have their music on one platform over going to these mixtape sites, so they were quickly squeezed out of relevance. But before this happened, a few rappers from the city would hop in the game and emerge as Atlanta's next generation stars. Starting off with Future.
Percocet, yeah, Miley Percocet, big firm, Percocet, yeah.
Future is an Eastside Atlanta rapper who used the trap blueprint and took it to new heights. While most trap music that came out in the 2000s was strictly about hustling and surviving, Future added this dark, moody, drug-fueled element that hooked fans right away. He was also a beast in the studio, recording so much music that almost every year since 2010 he's put out multiple projects. In 2011 alone, he dropped 5 mixtapes, including the iconic Dirty Sprite and True Story. By the mid-2010s, he'd go from local to global with a series of huge projects. Monster, 56 Nights, which is often seen as the greatest trap mixtape ever in history, Beast Mode, and his #1 debuting album, DS2. Future also uplifted a new group of Atlanta creatives that would become staples in the scene for the years to come. First was DJ Esco, the DJ who hosted the majority of Future's iconic mixtapes throughout the years. He also helped bring up some legendary producers like Metro Boomin, Southside, and later on ATL Jacob. But Future wasn't the only one winning big at this time. His success was also matched by the Migos. The Migos were actually from Lawrenceville, a city 30 miles northeast of Atlanta. But they made major moves in the city in the 2010s, backed by the homegrown label Quality Control Music. The group's unique sound, image, and call and response style hooked the industry right away and set them up to become stars. In 2013, the group dropped their album YRN, which had the infectiously catchy track Versace on it. This was one of the earliest songs that embraced Migos' triplet rapping style, which fans loved, and today's become one of the most copied flows ever. Drake hopped on the remix after hearing it, which really made the song pop. After that, the Migos followed it up with huge albums like YRN 2, Culture, and Culture 2. And just like Future, the Migos helped turn other Atlanta producers into superstars. The notable ones were Mike Will Made It, OG Parker, Sonny Digital, and TM88. The Migos were also credited for bringing Atlanta slang to the masses. Words like drip, cap, plug, gas were all brought to life by the Migos. I was in high school when these records came out, and I remember everyone on the football and track team were blasting Migos songs and using their slang. Literally everyone. And it's ironic because this is the same thing that made people turned off from the South back in the 90s. People hated the slang and the country accents back then, but by the 2010s, Atlanta culture was the culture. Pretty crazy to think about. But the Migos weren't the only ones bringing new slang to the scene. Young Thug was equally famous for this, coining the terms slime, slat, twin, and ski. He was also known for his unconventional fashion choices, rocking extremely bold colors and even some dresses from time to time. This began to stretch the mold of what a rapper was supposed to look like, which a ton of artists in and outside the city have taken influence from. Future, Migos, and Thug were the leaders of the second generation of trap artists, but they were far from the last. Right after that came 21 Savage, Lil Yachty, Gunna, Lil Baby, and Playboi Carti. This also kicked off the era of mumble rap, one of the most controversial phases of rap ever.
I just don't understand because I don't see where I be mumbling.
The definition of mumble rap is shaky and it kind of depends on who you ask, but for the sake of the video, we'll use the ChatGPT definition. Mumble rap is a loosely defined subgenre of hip hop where the artist's vocal delivery is often melodic, slurred, or hard to understand, hence the term mumble. The characteristics are words that may be unclear or blended together, focusing more on flow and vibe than precise enunciation, prioritizing catchy hooks and emotional tone rather than complex wordplay, using modern trap beats, heavy bass, hi-hats, and atmospheric sounds, rapping about lifestyle, fame, money, relationships, and mood-based expression. And often the style was influenced by tons of drug use, from weed to prescription pills to a whole lot of lean. This is pretty much exactly what the Atlanta sound was in the 2010s, making the city the center of the mumble rap debate. Media outlets like Hot 97's Ebro in the Morning and Complex's Everyday Struggle, RIP to one of the greatest shows ever, were at the forefront of the argument. They constantly criticized ATL artists for what they saw as dumbing down and devaluing rap. The debate also created some of the funniest, most infamous moments in the culture ever, like the time that Migos almost sent Joe Budden to an early grave after a BET Awards interview. And we can't forget when Migos responded with the Ice Trae song right afterwards, calling Joe Budden a pussy on wax.
If a nigga hatin', call him Joe Budden.
But it wasn't just the media dumping on mumble rap. Other rappers did it too, most famously J. Cole with his Everybody Dies track. Russ also took shots at the movement and drug use involved by wearing a shirt that read, "How much stands and leans do you have to do before you realize you're a fucking loser?" Despite the mumble rap backlash, young fans loved and celebrated it like crazy. On top of that, the mumble rappers of Atlanta stood the test of time arguably better than non-mumble rappers, with the majority of them from the mid-2010s era still being hugely successful today. It's interesting to see how it all played out. The most interesting part about the trap wave and trap music in general is not only did it become huge in Atlanta, but it's one of the few genres ever in music that reshaped the entire sound of music. Back in the day, you had blues, jazz, rock, then the birth of hip-hop in the 70s, and trap has been the most recent one. At this point, trap music has expanded to every single genre of music in the world to some degree. Pop, K-pop, rock, country, Afrobeats, drill, reggaeton, and literally everything else. As far as I know, no other genre has had that big of a reach ever in history. The first example of a trap crossover track taking over was from another homegrown Atlanta artist, Lil Nas X. In 2018, he found one of these crossover beats on YouTube, a country trap type beat from a producer named Young Keo. He took that beat and made the biggest record of the entire year, Old Town Road. The country trap record spent 19 weeks on top the Billboard Hot 100 and got a remix from the old school country legend Billy Ray Cyrus, also known as Miley Cyrus's dad. This opened up the floodgates for a ton more trap-influenced songs and other genres to run the charts. More examples include My Ex-Best Friend by MGK and Black Bear, which is a pop-punk trap song, Montero by Lil Nas X, also pop trap, Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, synthwave trap vibe, and Go Crazy by Chris Brown, R&B trap. There's so many R&B trap examples, trap soul, it's a whole other iteration of it too. It's crazy. There's a million more examples, but those are the ones that come to my mind right away. Atlanta trap didn't just take over music, it literally became music. It's been the most dominant sound in music since its conception back in the early 2000s, and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Every day we lit, yeah. You can't tell me shit, yeah. Remember I was broke, yeah. Now I'm getting rich, yeah.
Now, given everything I've said, it could seem like Atlanta's been a pure success story, but that is far from the truth. The city has had undeniable success, but several undeniable tragedies as well. The first and most blatant of these tragedies is the long list of artists who passed away before they reached their potential. It's a super long list, but I want to mention as many people as I can to pay respects. First is Bankroll Fresh from Zone 3, who had big hits in the mid-2010s like Hot Boy and Walked In. He was seen as many as being next up in the city, but sadly he was shot by a fellow rapper and childhood friend No Plug in March of 2016. Fresh ended up passing away, and No Plug was never charged because it was seen as self-defense. Next is Lil Marlo, an artist from the West Side who was locked in with QC. The label was setting him up as their next big artist, giving him tons of features like Future and Lil Baby on tracks like First and Third. He was about to really take off, but sadly in July of 2020, he was shot and killed on I-285 in a targeted attack. Nobody's been arrested so far, and the case remains unsolved today. Third is Takeoff from Lawrenceville, one of the 3 iconic Migos members. I could make a whole video listing all his accolades, but sadly everything was cut short when he was accidentally shot in a Houston bowling alley in 2022 after a dice game dispute. The shooter's name was Patrick Xavier Clark, and he's lined up to go to court for the case on November 9th this year. And there's so many more, arguably more than any other major city. Young Scooter, Rich Homie Quan, Lil Key, Trouble, and Shawty Lo all passed away before their time. The list is crazy, and if I went back to the 90s and 2000s, I could list a lot more. Some of these deaths were health related, like Lil Key, who passed from a rare condition called eosinophilia, and others were random, like Shawty Lo, who passed in a single car crash. However, the sad reality is the vast majority of these deaths were to violence. They were almost all gun violence. Home invasions, drive-bys, robberies gone wrong, literally the worst imaginable outcomes. It's super sad and very crazy to think about. Another tragedy that's plagued the city is the intense legal issues that so many rappers faced throughout the years. People forget, these rappers weren't just rapping about street stuff because it was cool. They were really from that and lived that lifestyle before rap, and often continued it even when they were successful. It's debatable how smart of a choice that is, but that's a topic for a whole other video. I would say about half the rappers from Atlanta, especially during the trap era, had deep legal issues. I think that's a safe estimate, and a lot of them some did hefty prison sentences because of it. Gucci Mane did 3 years for guns in the mid-2010s. T.I. was sent away for a year and a day off of gun charges. YFN Lucci, another rapper from the city that popped from his massive hit Everyday We Lit, just got off a 4-year bid after being sentenced to 20 but getting let out early. Lil Baby had serious charges despite never going to prison. 21 Savage had big immigration issues due to his time in the streets. But the most famous one was the YSL Rico case, which had Young Thug, Gunna, and 26 others from the city hemmed up on Fed charges. Now recently, and luckily, no one from the city has had to do any real crazy time. The same can't be said about LA, and definitely not New York, with drill rappers like K-Flock getting football numbers behind bars. But either way, the struggle is real and led to a lot of harsh sentences for the voices of the city.
I got these bitches mad again. Never about no money, but it's always about these men.
Through all the pain, struggle, and loss, Atlanta has made and kept a name for itself across multiple decades and is now seen as arguably a stronger hip-hop hub than New York and LA. The city beat the odds by every metric and continues to win today. The cheap cost of living relative to New York and LA, along with the collaborative nature that exists in the city, is bringing in artists by the boatloads, all looking for a shot to make their mark in Atlanta's history books. And now there's a new generation of artists in the city making noise. Those names include Huncho, Laserdisc 700, Bun B, and Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely with their Opium sound. With all that said, that's the full history of Atlanta rap. Let me know what you think in the comments, along with which city you'd want to hear about next. And if you want to learn more about another region's history, I did a full breakdown of West Coast hip hop here on the channel. Check it out.